Okay, if you had to pick a Muppet, but Kermit, Piggy, Fozzie, Gonzo, and Rolf are off the table, who's your pick?
You have to pick a Muppet butt?
Yeah, but... Welcome, friends and fans, to another episode of GalaxyCon Live, where we are bringing the convention experience directly to you. And today, we are going to put on makeup and dress up right with three amazing guests from Muppet history. So without further ado, let's bring them out. Our first guest is a creative jack of all entertainment trades, as a writer, director, and producer whose amazing body of work includes Star Trek, Star Wars, The Curious Creations of Christine McDonald. Today, though, he joins us to talk about his many contributions to the Muppetverse, including Dinosaurs, Muppet Treasure Island, Muppets Wizard of Oz, and so much more. Please welcome back one of my best convention buddies, Kirk Thatcher.
My Isaac Washington opening.
Hey!
How are you? Happy Saturday.
And to you as well, my friend. How you be?
I'm good. I just finished editing a project that was announced last week, so I'm well rested. I've had a day off.
Oh.
and coffee, so I'm great.
always awesome. Just want to say, man, I'm looking forward to the day when I can see you in person again, because I miss our chats, I miss our barbecue dinners, and I miss hearing the stories. And you have so much too. Just throw this out real quick. A lot of fans, of course, know you from your cameo role in Star Trek 4 as the punk on the bus. But what a lot of people don't know is that you're also the voice of the computer at the beginning that tests Spock.
Correct. And I wrote the questions. And
you did. And you slid in a little Star Wars Easter egg into that.
Star Wars, yeah. And I slid mine. Yeah, there's a bunch of Easter eggs in there, but there's two actually in that little bit. Yeah, I have a weird career. It's very patchwork, but never dull.
Absolutely. So, Kirk, my friend, glad to have you here. Welcome back. Good to see you. Good health and good spirit.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And next, he is a puppeteer performer whose body of work includes Fraggle Rock, Dark Crystal, and the creative force behind the fantastic YouTube series Cave In with Weldon, the IT guy. IT standing for Internet Troll. Today, he joins us to discuss all of that, as well as his many contributions to the Muppetverse, which include such characters as Ernie, Wembley, Beaker, and of course, Kermit the Frog. Please welcome back our friend Steve Whitmire.
Steve.
Hi.
Terrified.
Oh, hello. I'm just feeling really goofy right now because I'm on with these wonderful people.
Steve, my friend, how are you?
I'm good. Things are good. If you hear any noise throughout our broadcast today, it's because we have a little construction going on in our little baby studio here next door. So I told them to be quiet, but you never know.
Wait, you're making a baby, Steve? Congratulations.
Well, it's it's kind of a first.
I know.
Yeah. I want to be famous for something, so I'm going to try.
Hey, there you go. So, how are things coming along with Weldon?
Well, Weldon is coming along well done. We are doing that show every month, as you know, I think, and having a good time doing it. It's as you know, it's a budget a nightmare because there is no budget. So we do everything we can for nothing. And you really get your creative juices flowing when you have to work that way.
Well, it's been a fantastic project. I am so glad. It's been a delight when it pops up on my YouTubes. Hey, new episode dropped. All right. And you've been getting some guests on that as well lately, I've seen.
Once in a while, yeah. So, actually, from coming to GalaxyCons, run into a lot of the folks who, Lou Ferrigno and Brian O'Halloran and Sam Jones and all those people have agreed to do stuff, so they'll pop on and do some silly thing,
Absolutely. Well, Steve, always a pleasure to see you. Glad to see you. Glad to see you doing well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And finally, he is an Academy and Grammy award-winning songwriter, composer, and actor whose body of work includes Battle for the Planet of the Apes, The Phantom of the Paradise, one of my favorites, and has been a guest on The Muppet Show, as well as composer of the Muppet Movie and A Muppet Christmas Carol. He's also the president of the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers, who joins us today on behalf of the organization's Sunlight of the Spirit Award Program. Please welcome back Paul Williams.
Light the lamp, not the rat. Light the lamp, not the rat. Oh my God. This is like family. It's absolutely a joy to be back. Thank you, Patty. Steve, Kirk,
Yes.
my God. Incidentally, everybody knows that the light the lamp, that voice is Steve's voice, and
Light the lamp, not the
one
rat.
of my favorite characters you've ever done.
Oh, thank you, Paul. My goodness, thank you.
You go back a ways, and
We
Kirk
do.
as well.
Not back as far as you go.
I want your hat.
Well, not back as far as you go with the Muppets on total, but yeah, I want to say the first time you and I met was maybe when you were doing a singing engagement in Toronto during our Fraggle Rock years, rather than on a Muppet. Well, no, I guess, I don't know whether we met during the first Muppet movie or not. I wasn't singing on that track, so I'm not sure.
Were you involved with them? I think it was Emmett Otter was the first thing I did for the Muppets. Were you around that?
That was just before I joined. So
Okay, yeah, right.
my first thing, I guess, that we would have worked together was probably the Muppet movie when we did some of the recordings for that. Yeah.
On the set doing voices and or working on the Muppet movie and
Yeah.
little did you know how it was going to change our lives. I mean,
Oh my goodness.
what a
Absolutely. So, Paul, welcome back. So glad to see you again. How have you been doing?
I've been great. As a matter of fact, I live on Zoom. I spend a lot of time on Zoom. You mentioned ASCAP. Thank you. ASCAP is the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers. We have 800,000 members, who are dealing with the pandemic and supplying the music to get us all, keep us all shiny side up. Because when the world gets, struck with something that is as in some ways horrific, certainly a challenge. We need to be able to get our emotions right to the surface, and songs do that, music does that, and this kind of talent does that as well. But it's a great honor to be the president of ASCAP, and within ASCAP we have the ASCAP Foundation, and I have the Sunlight of the Spirit Awards.
Yeah.
So whenever I show up here, that money is used for the Sunlight of the Spirit Awards for people that are exemplary in recovery and in music. So by you buying time with Paulie today, or getting something signed by Paulie today, you're going to help somebody get sober. So for me, it's a double gift because I get to sit here with people that I've admired from the moment.
Well, once again, Paul, thank you again for joining us. It's absolute delight. And gentlemen, thank you all for joining us. Again, I have missed you all tremendously for our physical stages, and I'm looking forward to the day when the world gets back to normal. And we're getting close. We're getting close where we can once again host you all on our physical stages and get you all back in front of your fans, and we can hang out in the green rooms again. Until that time, we have the GalaxyCon virtual stage, and we're going to keep this going too, even when the physical conventions come back. And right now, our team's going through the chat room right now. In the meantime, I'd like to throw this out. You all worked with Jim Henson, and you all seem to come on in at different facets of it. So I just love to hear. I'd love to hear your take when you first met Jim and your interpretation of what he meant to you.
Yeah, you should start with Paul because he has the longest relationship with Jim. Yeah.
Oh my God! It's I went over and I did the Muppet show in England, and that was when I met Jim. But I was already a fan. The amazing you're on the road, with your road band, and you're playing dates all over. You're waking up with probably a hangover in Akron, and we would always turn on Sesame Street. I mean. There was something about Sesame Street that I was an immature baby in a lot of ways, certainly acting like one. And I never felt like even Sesame Street directed at children, I never felt excluded as an adult. I mean, and ask Steve, ask Kirk that the last thing that Jim would ever expect from us is to write down to kids and all. But doing the Muppet Show, it was just, I felt like I was with family right away. There was something about Jim that was it was like a blanket of just, I felt safe. I felt like I was with somebody that I really, really loved right away. And he was so flexible. I remember playing him a song that he didn't think would work in the movie. It was, I'm going to go back there someday.
Oh, wow.
I played him the song and he went, well. He had a loveliest way of saying that's not going to work if anybody you ever met, And then a couple of days later, he came back and he said, if this is about Gonzo relating to flying and all, what if we had a scene where Gonzo buys some balloons and he gets to experience it and all?
Oh.
I mean, I went, wow, who does that in like this business?
Yeah.
So he was an angel. Steve?
Well, yeah, playing off of that, he would jump off the deep end creatively too. I get the impression that he would decide he was going to do something like Gonzo and the Balloons without even giving really real thought. You know, he thought there'll be a string and there'll be a crane, but he really hadn't figured it out. He just jumped in the deep end and then figured out how to do it. You know,
Yeah.
One of the amazing things about him. Yeah, I met him when I was, I guess, 18, and same thing. You know, I was this shy kid who loved doing puppets, and I played around with puppets for a long time, and I thought I knew the basics of that, which I really didn't. You know, and I learned from him and that whole team. But he was, I think what Paul said is so important. It was a safe place to be to learn for somebody like me. You know, I could come in and he was, I don't know, he tended to see potential in people that I certainly didn't know I had. You know, he tended to see beyond the limitations we might see in ourselves, and then bring people in and usually stick with them if they wanted to stick around, you know, to a large degree. And yeah, that was certainly my experience. You know, safety, and learning at your own pace. You know,
I think there's definitely a case of I look at some of my heroes artistically, Walt Disney and George Lucas, and I think like the common denominator about them, along with Jim, is that great talent can also spot great talent.
Yeah, that's true.
They can definitely see that. They definitely see that potential. Other people may like write it off everything else, and I think a lot of you guys and your peers as well, I think definitely benefited from that.
Well, it's interesting because Jim had his sort of core group of people, and he brought many other people in to satellite around that to do a lot of projects. But Paul is like, in my mind, is part of the core group of the Muppets. I mean, we worked on so many different things together, and even before my time, he was working on Muppet projects. And he's one of those people that he's like, in my mind, he's the Muppet music guy. You know, I've always thought that. To such a large degree. Sensibility and tone and whimsy and everything.
Yeah, I could agree. So
I cry easily. I laugh in all the wrong places. That's it's like,
well, we should let Kirk talk, but I have a story I want to tell about you in a minute, Paul. But we'll get back to that.
Oh, there's no agenda. Tell the story. You can't do that.
Oh, no,
you talk. Everyone's going to be like, shut up, Kirk. Tell the story.
How about say, Steve? Yeah, go ahead, do it, Steve.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to completely cut Kirk out of the question.
No.
Okay,
we'll get to him. You tell your story, and then
really, I'll give you the brief version if I can.
Okay.
When I went over to do Christmas Carol, it was the first major project I had done after Jim's death as Kermit. It was a big one. And we were all, you know, testing the waters. Can we keep the Muppets going? Is it going to work? Are we going to be able to do this? And I was incredibly nervous. And you know, it's different when you've got the puppet on your hand and you're trying to do a character than when you're just doing it bare naked vocals. And so the first thing was to go in and record all the songs. And so I was you know, a basket case, and I thought, oh God, you know, it's going to be terrible. And long story short, it's basically I went in and I had rehearsed like crazy, and I went in and sung. I think we started with One More Sleep Till Christmas. Kermit's part of that. And I did the first, you know, we did many takes, but I just went in and sung it. And this kind of dark space, and I'm in a, you know, everybody's behind a glass and you can barely see them, and Paul's in there and whoever else was there. And in the earphones, Paul's voice really close to Mike just said, "Now that's Kermit."
Oh,
it set my tone for the entire film.
Wow.
Just changed all of that nervousness, you know. And I thought, this guy knows what Kermit should sound like.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, you know, I believe in reincarnation, and I think Kermit reincarnated with Steve there, and I think that it was, you know, not only did you not lose anything, but you brought, you know, you brought another room to, you know, to that mansion of emotions that is Kermit.
Well, thank you for that, but it's just meant so much to me that you were the first person to say you're okay with this. You know, you're going to be okay with this.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah.
Paul, thank you for that. And Steve, Paul was absolutely right. In my heart, and fans and everything else, we'd all agree. And we've spoken on stage about how Kermit sat in your closet, I think, for a month before you
kind of
even try. Yeah.
Prior to that, I was very nervous. You know, I put the puppet on and I did this, and I could make I knew how to make a puppet work kind of by then. I've been with Jim for 12 years. And then Kermit sort of looked at me, and I made eye contact with this puppet that was on my own hand. And it was like Kermit was saying, well, okay, say something. Come on, say something. And this is like 3 weeks after Jim passed away. It freaked me out. And I took Puppet off, put it in another room, and didn't touch it for weeks.
Wow.
I couldn't go near it. You know?
I've always said that if you had a conversation with Jim and Frank Oz, and they had Piggy and Kermit with them, there were 5 of us in the conversation.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Piggy would say things to me that Frank would never say.
Exactly.
Frank's a very nice man, strong and kind and everything, that woman, that pig is just
oh yeah. Well, and you're right. I mean, that woman, it's not Frank. It's not like it's maybe an aspect somewhere in there, of course, but it's it's a separate entity.
And I have guinea pigs, so it's not. I don't have a thing about pigs or anything. I have 2 guinea pigs that my wife brought them home, and I said, "You brought home a guinea pig?" Oh, look at him.
Nice. And then we come to the new kid, Kirk.
Yeah, my joke is, they call me the new guy. I've only been with the Muppets for 35 years.
Exactly.
I met Jim. He had just Labyrinth had come out, and Jim Frawley's ex-wife I'd been working with, and we'd become friends. And I was showing her this project that was going to have puppets and spaceships and all this. And she said, who would like this is Jim Henson. Would you like to meet him? I think I can, set that up. I'm like, I would love that. So I had worked with a bunch of people on Jedi who had done Dark Crystal. So I'd heard all the stories about how great he was to work with and collaborative. So I met him at the Bel Air Hotel. We had lunch. We went back to his room. It was him and Marianne, his assistant. And I sat on the floor and he sat in a chair, and I just pulled out all these drawings and was just talking about ideas and characters I created. So I sort of met him as an idea guy designer, which the only other person that hired people like that was George Lucas, who I'd worked with on Jedi. And Jim, Paul, I think, brought up his reactions where it's funny for a guy who's enthusiastic. His presence was very calming, like you said. That he would just look at something and go, that's lovely, like lovely a lot. And so we had this great meeting, and you're comfortable within 5 minutes. And a couple of weeks later, I was living at my parents' at that time because Star Trek 4, I was paid so little I had to move back to my parents' house. But it was definitely worth it because Leonard Nimoy was another amazing, collaborator or boss. And so my mom answered the phone. It was like, Jim Henson, is Kirk there? Or, is Kirk there? She's like, I'm calling, it's Jim Henson. She thought it was a buddy of mine joking. So she was like, oh, okay, Jim Henson. So I picked up the phone. I'm like, she goes, it's Jim Henson, but So I picked up the phone and talked to Jim, and he said, hey, I'd like to hire you to work on a project with me. And it started this collaboration where for me, it was like the joy of creating. He and I would sit down in a room. If I'd had a camera there, I would have filmed it. And I would bring in drawings, and then we'd just talk about them, and he'd point out, like, I like this, like, that's lovely, and he never was like, no, yes, no. It was like, that's lovely, explore that more, or like, I don't think that would work. It was never, it was like the Japanese don't have a word for no. I don't think Jim rarely in a collaboration ever said no. It was like, well, I think this is a better path, and this I don't think it's successful maybe. So I started as like an idea guy / designer, which he had, Michael Frith was definitely that. And there were a couple other fellows over the years. John Stevenson, the animation director, went on to do Kung Fu Panda. And so I became friends with them and moved to New York in '88 to work on the Jim Henson Hour. So I'd worked with him for a couple of years as a freelancer, and the collaboration, I was so spoiled. I mean, I started with Lucas and then Nimoy and then Jim Henson, who would have these meetings, and Steve and Paul. There was a meeting room in New York, 117 East 69th Street. Yeah. And it was like a 28-foot long,
it was huge,
cherry table that could fit like 16, 18 people. And it would just be all these creative people, performers, writers, producers. Bill Prady was a writer back then with the Muppets. And we'd all just sit around and brainstorm. Jerry Jewell, of course. We just brainstorm ideas, and there was it's that classic thing you hear but so rarely experience, which is like there's no bad ideas. It's a dog pile of, and so I was so spoiled with that, and just blossomed, and he and I, like anyone who worked with him more than once, you became a friend, or at least you felt like you were a friend, not an employee. I never felt like that, and so that's how I met him, was right after Labyrinth, and just pitching this weird space idea that he liked, and the rest is history. And the last thing we worked on was dinosaurs. That same
that we all liked, and we all like dinosaurs as well.
Oh,
correct?
yeah.
Mama.
Not the mama.
Yeah.
So that's my little part of history there.
Absolutely. I envy all three of you for being able to share some time with him. He was at Disney a day that I was there, and he was filming stuff, and it was like, oh, his head store. Oh, well, let's ride Star Tours, because we're in the grand opening of Star Tours, and
oh,
I know, c'est la vie. But one fun one that a friend of mine wanted to ask, so I'll ask on his behalf. Okay, if you had to pick a Muppet, but Kermit, Piggy, Fozzie, Gonzo, and Rolf are off the table, who's your pick?
You have to pick a Muppet butt?
Yeah, but
pick a Muppet butt.
Most of them
so
don't have
basically,
butts,
who would be your favorite, I guess, Muppet off the B list, instead of like the classics of Kermit or Piggy? It's like, is there a Muppet character that you like? Like I always say, like either Zoot or Gaffer. I love the cat.
Now, original show or all Muppet history?
All Muppet history.
Huh.
Wow. Well, I like Pepe because he's a jerk, and I was involved in his creation. But he's not all sugar coated, and he's the one Muppet who isn't trying to help everybody else. He's just in it for himself. And I think as a writer, it's really helpful to have someone who isn't just like, well, what does everyone else think? He's like, no, he's going to burn his own path.
That's
he always gets his comeuppance. He's always, but he's like, a total flirt. He's fun, but as to create for too. And Bill Barretta is great as the performer. So
what was the gag when something like that opens a door, but it's only big enough for him? It's like, works for me.
Oh yeah, and Muppets from Space. Yeah.
Yes, that's what it was. Yeah,
Yeah.
And he left them all behind.
And the part where they're invisible and they come back and he's in a ballerina outfit spinning around and they can see him and he's like, what? I love that. So I guess Pepe, but again, I work with him. So
that's absolutely fair.
What about you, Paul? What do you have one that you're thinking of, or?
Aurora Borealis, Shannon and Dallas.
Yeah.
Teeth, yeah.
There's something, first of all, I'm a terrible piano player. And if I would love to have some of Dr. T's absolute ability of soulfulness. It's the best band. It's
I could do your hands for you.
It's, but yeah, there's just there are little. They're from. No matter where I go in that spectrum of characters that I love, I will always come back to Gonzo. Dave Goltz is just, again, it's like there's something of Dave in Gonzo. Absolutely. And something of Gonzo in Dave that it just, I for some reason the songs that feel the closest to the center of my chest, I wind up writing them for for Gonzo.
Yeah.
There's not a word yet for old friends who just met. I want and I don't believe that I write that. Even like the songs in the Muppet Movie I wrote with Kenny Asher. Kenny is basically music and I'm basically lyrics. And sometimes, like in the Muppet Christmas Carol, I wrote both. But I'm like. Yeah. But I have to think that anytime I write something for Gonzo, I wish I could be Santa Claus. There is something in his character that was created, by Dave, that I feel like I almost need to put him on the paper as a co-writer, because the song begins with how how Gonzo affects me. And Gonzo affects me with this, the thing is, his heart is his hood ornament. I mean, his heart and his sweetness is a hood ornament, but it's not his, it's not his license plate. It's kind of what he follows, but it's almost as if he's commenting on what he's feeling. It's like, wow, I don't know. It's like there's something. It's a very textured character. And I wanna, when I cross the veil, who would I want to be there? Go, hey, I'm so glad you're here. I would like, I want Gonzo to come maybe long after me, but the spirit of Gonzo, if it can travel, when I go through that veil, I'd like to have Gonzo going, wow, we've been wondering when you were going to get here. In the 40s, when you were in your 40s, we sure would be a lot earlier. But then you got sober and look what happened.
Gonzo in heaven.
I think Gonzo won my heart. I think the first time I saw him on the show and doing his act, he said, once again, I will defy death and good taste. And
well, that defines him. Yeah,
that was the quintessential line.
He's not afraid to make a fool of himself. And I realized something years ago that most of the Muppets, the thing that they do that they think they're good at, they're really not very good at it, but they just get out there and do it anyway, But Piggy's a horrible singer, a terrible actress, but she does it,
I think that's why they're inspiring to so many people. They kind of have no shame, but it all comes, it doesn't come from ego, it comes from joy. Again, just where the Muppets were created, the joy of creation, whether it's a song or a stunt or a comedy, a joke. And the fact that they fail doesn't deter them. Yeah. And that's kind of the joy of writing and working with them, is that they can fail, like you said, but can always fail, yet they just keep going. And I think it's really inspirational. And also, again, back to the joy of creation and play, that playfulness is why I think it resonates with me so strongly. So Steve,
I think I need a little time to think, but I go back to my fan days as much as anything. And breaking out of the Muppet, I mean, can I go to Sesame Street? Because
of course.
I think for me, it's probably Grover. To me, Grover was like, I don't know whether Frank thinks this, but I feel like Grover was Frank's breakout character in Frank's early years. He done Bert, and Bert's amazing, but all of a sudden, this really neurotic little monster, Grover's got some issues, and he's, I think he probably, this is me, this is not Frank, but I feel like he probably has all of his socks turned the same way in the drawer. He's all the cans face forward in the cabinet. I don't know. I love Grover, and he brought a depth to the characters on Sesame Street. That was really nice. And then he sort of turned into Miss Piggy in a way, kind of a little bit.
All those characters lived on outside of the show, whatever the show is.
Yeah.
You see them going home or having a life outside of it. And I think that's one thing I think a lot of fans don't get. The diehard fans get it, is that when a performer is brought in to do a character because someone passed away, it's not because they're a perfect voice match. It's because they embody that spirit and carry that, like you said, Paul, so beautifully. They add rooms to that house. And it's not just a voice match. It's not like a cartoon where you don't sound like Bugs Bunny, but it's like, no, you embody Kermit or whatever, and bring more to the part as opposed to just doing a impression. And I think
that's for me, that was totally about having been around Jim. I mean, it would have been possible. I had to differentiate and then put it back together again. What parts of Kermit are Jim and what parts aren't, and what did he take from himself, because there was so much that just came right out of Jim that was Kermit, alter ego almost. And that's really important.
Well, it's funny you say that, because we were hanging out at something, it was not a work thing, and Jim's girlfriend said, you talk like Kermit sometimes. He's like, no, I don't. And she goes, you come into a meeting and your first words are, "Whoa." It was so funny to hear that he didn't see or hear that. Right. And the other thing that made me laugh that Jerry Jewell told me is that Frank didn't do voices for the first 8 years or something that he was he thought he couldn't do a funny voice. And I was like, Frank has such a distinct voice to think and his voices are very, completely original and memorable. It's funny that the self-awareness on both of those guys in some ways was low, probably because they jump into, like you're saying, they jump into things and do it.
Yeah.
Just as a button on Frank too, that Frank's directs, and I wish I could remember the name of the show. At 80, every now and then there's like about 12-second delay when you're trying to pull something up. But I just watched it's a Broadway show that was filmed that Frank directed.
Oh, Little Shop.
What's
Shop.
it called?
Little
No,
Shop.
are you talking about the one he just did? The
the
Magic.
one he just did. Oh.
It's
Yeah.
brilliant. I mean, it's absolutely brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, it's so much of it is about labels, about how people see us, what box, what square do people see us in, and all, and how that affects the way we move into the world if we put somebody in that box. And he's a classic example, I think, of somebody that just would not stay in the box. He just slid in all the other places.
Right.
His creativity runs free, and it's just. And incidentally, one of the most considerate. I mean, he just sent me some. They did a thing where all the Muppeteers speak and all, and he sent me some of the stuff that didn't make it in the. They never mentioned music in the show. They never mentioned. They're talking about all this and everything, but obviously they did, and whoever cut it together. But he took some stuff off the cyber cutting room floor and he sent it to me, and it was so thoughtful to do that, and it's like those little things, those little bits of warmth that somebody hands you is it just moves me like a warm wind. I love it.
Yeah.
Very awesome. That's cool. Well, gentlemen, thank you for indulging my questions. I think we're good to go on questions for our audience. Let's go ahead and roll our first one. And here's one from Thomas, who wants to know, what Muppet do you feel like you have the most in common with?
Oh, wow.
Oh, my goodness.
Gonzo, for sure.
Well, you kind of got it away.
Yeah, exactly.
What about you, Kirk? Because I don't even know.
I would say half Gonzo, half Uncle Deadly.
Oh, that's interesting.
Well, I've loved Uncle Deadly from the start, and he's developed. He's being developed more and more. I tend to like, the Muppets who are. I don't know. I love Fozzie. When you write for them, you have to have them live in your head. So I identify with aspects of all of them. I identify with Fozzie making bad jokes, and then that neuroses of like, I want to be funny, but I'm not funny. Gonzo, yes. Bunsen, sort of that abstract looking at the world in a sort of slightly autistic way of like, oh, that's interesting, as opposed to not having an emotional connection to some things and having that reserve. I don't know, there's so many. I probably a little bit in every Muppet, maybe a couple, no, but I would say most of them have some aspect that I feel in common with. I think that's why they're successful.
My favorite thing to do with these things is to puppeteer the guy above me. So my favorite puppet is it's Victor French. He's Edwards. Anyway,
Victor French.
Yeah, you could warm your hand up next time.
It's kind of silly to name a character that I performed in a way, because obviously I would have something in common.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
But
you did so many.
Oh, I did a lot. I probably let me change the question slightly to just say I loved the opportunity to keep Jim's influence into Kermit as long as I could. But probably my favorite character to ever perform was Rizzo, the rat, because it was a little bit more me. It was my guy from the beginning, and I felt a little bit more freedom to take him wherever I wanted to. So I don't know whether I really have anything in common with him. I like food a lot, and I don't like getting my tail on fire. So I guess maybe I do.
Yeah, Rizzo is one of my absolute favorites and all, and that's why I opened with, light the lamp, not the tail, light the lamp, not the tail.
Well,
yeah.
And he was kind of a little bit of a huckster too. Again, I loved writing for him because he wasn't like, let's all sing Kumbaya. He was like, how can you make a buck? He was a rat, and unashamedly a rat, yet still part of the Muppets. So again, I love that character that you created.
Yeah,
I love we haven't given the respect that Ralph deserves either. I think we have to take a moment, and I want to share what is one of my favorite Muppet moments in all of my history with the Muppet. When I did the Muppet Show, I sang this song called "Sad Song," I mean, and so it's Ralph playing the piano, and I'm singing this sad song. It used to be our song. It's a very sad song called Sad Song. And I finished the song, and there's an amazing moment where Ralph is sitting there, and there are other Muppets singing background as well, and I'm leaning on the piano, and Ralph finishes the song, and he looks at me, and he closes the piano, and it's like it's like he's expressing all the sadness, and it's like, we're done singing for now. This is, and he kind of taps on the piano, and it's the most stunningly subtle, textured, beautiful moment, and that's Ralph, and I think Jim. Yeah.
I think I was in a panel once and I said, Kermit is Elvis, Rolf is Dylan.
Yes. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, and I think Frank Oz told me back when I was starting directing just little Muppet short things, he goes, when the puppets work is when you see them think or when you see them feel, and rarely are they talking. He said, that's the magic. When as a writer, you write dialogue, he said, but you need to give them the moments to think or feel. Yeah. That's a tribute to what you guys do, which is, I always say what you did with Kermit, Steve. I said, you could react like you're shocked, you're curious. I mean, just the subtlety you brought to, any good actor is their best when they're not talking, when they're not doing a line. I would say that's when their skills show. And you did so much. I could always cut to Kermit reacting, even if you weren't doing the lines, because you were like, oh, he's sad. Oh, he thinks he's skeptical, and stuff that most people can't do with their face, let alone do with their hands. So,
well, thank you for that.
It's always sing your praises.
Absolutely. So, Thomas, great question. Thank you so much. For me, I say I have to identify, since we started doing this the past year, I have to identify with a newscaster. Here is a Muppet News Flash.
Somebody's going to fall on you now.
Yeah, exactly. Here's one from Alex. Ooh, what was your dream job growing up? Oh.
Kirk, is it true that you used to lift cars? I read that somewhere recently.
I could lift the back end of a Volkswagen.
Holy mother, that's amazing. I
was really strong. I hated sports. I liked individual sports, and I did weightlifting one summer in high school. And my brother was fixing Volkswagen, so I realized I could lift up the back of a Volkswagen. I couldn't do it.
Wow.
Also, was too stupid to, my mom found out, and she's like, "Are you crazy? My dad was long waisted as I am. He's like, you could get a hernia." I didn't know what that was. I was like, okay, I tested it first. Wow. In my head. I lifted it up, a foot and put it down. Yeah.
I didn't need it. I just thought maybe that was your dream job.
No, it's not my dream job. My dream job was to make movies and nothing specific, more specific than that. Make movies with creatures and comedy. So like the Muppets ended up being, right up my alley. Somewhere between Muppets and Gremlins.
What about you, Paul? I mean, did you plan on being a singer actor?
All I wanted to do was act, be an actor. I just, I was a construction grad, so I went to 9 schools by the time I was in the 9th grade. When I graduated from high school, I was 4'6", and I looked like a kid until you put me next to a real kid, and I looked like a kid with a hangover. It was just, so for me to get acting jobs was really, really difficult. Yeah. And I did a couple of movies. I did the Loved One with Jonathan Winters and this thing about the American Way of Death. And then a couple of years later, just like that, I got another job in a movie called The Chase. It was like Marlon Brando, Jane Fonda, this huge film. Had a small part. There were like 4 teenagers that kind of bopped their way through every now and then. They'd showed up and do something destructive. And I didn't have a lot of lines, but I was, I'm watching Brando and Redford and Robert Duvall and everything. And I got with the guy I was sharing a dressing room with, Mark Seaton, had a beautiful Martin guitar that he was playing. And I picked it up and he went, don't, it's a Martin, be careful. Oh my God. But I went out, I just thought it was so beautiful. And I loved music. I loved especially the American songbook, Sinatra and, Cole Porter and all that world,
Yeah.
as opposed to rock and roll, which I discovered 10 years after everybody else did. But I bought this little guitar and sitting on the front steps of our little motorhome, at shooting at night, this scene at a junkyard where the kids just set fire to the junkyard, and the character Bubba, played by Robert Redford, is hiding in the junkyard. And I just amusing myself, trying to figure out the chords. I wrote, Bubba, 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 come out wherever you are. Or we're going to come in and get you. Yes, we're going to come in and get you. And Robert Duvall was walking by. Robert Duvall went, what is that? I said, it's a guitar. Isn't it great? No, not the guitar. What? Not the guitar. What were you just singing? And I went, and my reaction was as if I was in trouble. I went, I just made it up. And he went, come with me. And I said, okay. And bring the guitar. Okay. So I bring the guitar. He walks me over to Arthur Penn, the director. He says, show him. I said, it's a guitar I just bought. He said, not the guitar. Show him the song you were just singing. And I went, blah, 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 blah. He said, what is that? I said, I just made it up. I mean, I thought like, oh my God, you've broken all the rules. You wrote a song while you're supposed to be watching, whatever. And he said, Stan, come over here, bud. They light him up. Yeah, they lit up the burning junkyard. Please bring the Kodak around. And they bring the camera around. And he says, all right, action. Play the song. But what? I played this song. Understand, this was probably 2 years before I started writing songs.
Wow.
I played it, and it's in the movie. And it's funny, at age 80, all of a sudden I look at that moment, I go, that was a billboard.
Wow.
There have been 2 huge billboards in my life that I was getting, and I didn't really notice at the time, but you're trying to be an actor, and without even trying, you get a chance to have a song in a major motion picture.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, I tried swimming across a little lake to get on a boat to steal some booze, and the alcohol almost drowned me. That's the other billboard.
Wow.
Yeah.
49 years old, I got sober. I went, wow. Alcohol tried to kill me when I was 16.
Wow.
That's a billboard. So if you're watching and you're having trouble with it, watch for billboards in your life. They can lead you to the place you're going to be happiest, I think.
Oh, no kidding.
Absolutely,
wow.
absolutely.
Wow.
And Paul, I'll go ahead and say this as an actor. Swan in Phantom of Paradise is one of the best screen villains of all time. When I written articles and I would have done the top 10, I usually put him about number 5 on the list, and I think it's a wonderful performance. It's a wonderful villain, and it's the craziness that is that film.
Thank you. It was a highlight in my life to do the 2 things that I love doing the most is writing songs and acting. And I just spent 2 seasons on Goliath watching Billy Bob Thornton. And I mean, on the set with Billy Bob, first of all, I love the man. He's a friend. I love the man. But watching him work, it's like you get it all, and he doesn't work and none of the work is out here. All the work is in here. He thinks and feels what he's feeling. And I mean, I'm hard of hearing. I wear hearing aids. So and he speaks very, very softly, So he'll say, we were shooting a scene where he's sleeping with his mask on to get the oxygen, whatever that's called. I break in. The scene starts with me slapping his leg, and I go, "What the hell is wrong with you? Get a decent lock on that front door. Like I could have cut you through it. A monkey with a credit card could have gotten into your room." And what he said in there, and I didn't even hear it to laugh. When I watched it, I heard what he said, and he said, "One just did." Acting lessons every moment I spent around Billy Bob Thornton. Every moment,
Nice.
11.
Very nice.
Wow. Wait.
So Steve, what did you want to be? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, well, I mean, I kind of wanted to be what I became.
Yeah.
I got so obsessed with the Muppets by the time I was 10 years old that there was no changing that. It was either going to be, the other thing I did was play in all the long-haired garage bands in high school, play keyboards. And I wasn't very good, but I had a good time. So I either wanted to do music or puppets, and Muppets was a great way to do both those things. And what paid off about being a horrible keyboard player was that I ended up doing once I was on the scene, I was doing all of Dr. Teeth's hands and Rolf's hands on the piano. And that's a great job for someone who's not a great piano person, keyboard person, but you get to mimic these incredibly well done tracks, and where your fingers need to go, so it's great. You get to be a great piano player,
And you have to be in the vicinity. So, anyone who plays piano goes, oh yeah, that's where your hands would be. But
when we did the first Muppet movie, the scene, you can't live with them, you can't live without them. I was doing Rolf's hands on the piano, and I rented a little spinet piano in my little apartment I had rented in California. That's a whole nother story. And I learned every note of that. I don't know who played piano on that, Paul. I don't recall. Was it Kenny?
Kenny, yeah, sure.
Dun,
Yeah.
dun, 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 dun. Anyway, that instrumental track, I learned every single note of it. And Rolf actually was, except that he only had 3 fingers, was playing the real notes on that piano keyboard. I knew him exactly, both hands in the air working with Jim,
Wow.
Well, it's great. It was interesting. There was a problem because the the production sound of the character was recorded with the music in the background, and so all of a sudden it was like, wait a minute, we had to find a way, because before the singing starts, you were absolutely on the correct notes and everything, but we're hearing all this mishmash of things that were recorded all, and it's like, what the hell are we going to do with that? And I don't know if it was Kenny, or it could have been Lincoln Majorca or somebody that went in and just kind of turned that mishmash into this wonderful kind of a musical intro that sounded just a little off, which of course it was.
Right. Yeah.
Perfect for the Muppets,
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it was an interesting challenge, but what an experience! What an amazing movie to work on, and look at that cast: Orson Welles.
But you bring up a good point about the Muppets. Like, it's sort of a loving insult now. Oh, you Muppet, but they can't really fail. You know what I mean? Like, if it isn't perfect, it's perfect. Like Jerry Jewell, the writer for most of the Muppet history, told me, he said, we would joke and say, it's just dumb enough for us. Like, it's goofy enough. In other words, not that it was bad, but it's bad enough that it works for the Muppets because they're not slick. Again, going back to they're sort of inspirational because they just keep striving to do what they want to do.
What you're talking about, Kirk, is perfect. There's a book called The Spirituality of Imperfection. The Spirituality of Imperfection. It's just, the mistakes lead us to the perfect place. Yeah, it's The Spirituality of Imperfection by Ernest Kurtz and Catherine Ketchum. Oh my God, I just did a commercial for them.
Alex, thank you so much. That was a great question. And GalaxyCon viewers, this has been my time with these men behind the Muppets. Gentlemen, any final words for our audience before we go?
No, thank you all for watching all these years. Yeah.
Thanks for being fans. Geez, you guys make us want to get up and do it every day. Thank you.
Yeah. And first of all, just to sit down with the 3 of you and all, it feels like we're hanging in the den or something and all, and just talking about my favorite subject ever, the sweetness of Jim Henson and all the Muppeteers and all, and I'm just honored to have had the chance to make some music for you guys through the years and all. Patty, you always make this easy and all, and so to everybody watching, you have given us the careers we have because you don't. And even the things that were, most importantly, the things that were not successful, like Phantom of the Paradise, the fans that went, oh, I love this so much and nobody else knows about it, I'm gonna, and they show it to everybody. all of a sudden in my life, I have somebody that loved it and nobody else did, calling me and asking me to work on their movie, or whether it's Daft Punk or you know, or Baby Driver. The fact is that the fans have given me the life I have today, and that's one of the reasons I really wanted to be here and do this and say hi to everybody. Steve, Kirk, what an honor to have worked with both of you, and
Ditto.
Same here. Same here, Paul. I hope to sit someday. Maybe we could sit. You know what I'd love to do is sit at an actual Comic-Con somewhere.
Yeah.
With you and watch Phantom of the Paradise. I don't know whether it's possible to screen it. You probably know more about the rights on that than I would, but maybe we could do that someday.
We've been talking about doing live commentaries on GalaxyCon or future shows. Tell you what, stick around after the show. I'll tell you a little bit more about the details.
Okay, good.
Definitely tell you this way too. In the meantime, gentlemen, as always, I miss you all. I love you all. Looking forward to seeing you again. Thank you for joining us on the GalaxyCon virtual stage. Thank you to our audience for joining us, and thank you all for those great questions. Hope to see you all again soon. Until then, bye-bye, everyone. Take care. And keep washing those hands.